فأما الإنسان إذا ما ابتلاه ربه فأكرمه ونعمه فأما الإنسان إذا ما ابتلاه ربه فأكرمه ونعمه فيقول ربي أكرمن وأما إذا ما ابتلاه فقدر عليه رزقه فيقول ربي أهانن كلا بل لا تكرمون اليتيم ولا تحاضون على طعام المسكين ولا تحاضون على طعام المسكين وتأكلون التراث أكلا لما وتحبون المال حبا جما وتحبون المال حبا جما كلا إذا دكت الأرض دكا دكا وجاء ربك والملك صفا صفا وجيء يومئذ بجهنم يومئذ يتذكر الإنسان وأنى له الذكرى يقول يا ليتني قدمت لحياتي فيومئذ لا يعذب عذابه أحد ولا يوثق وثاقه أحد يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية فادخلي في عبادي فادخلي في عبادي وادخلي جنتي. صدق الله العلي العظيم. أفلح من صلى على محمد وآل محمد.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Thank you, Brother Qarrar, for that beautiful recitation. Just a couple of announcements before we begin the lecture. The My Cafe is open. They're selling coffees and refreshers, so please go and check them out. And also, for the latest updates, you can check out NYC Media for all of our latest announcements. Tonight, the topic will be about Sayeda Zainab leading the post-Ashura revolution. It's my honor to welcome Samahat Sayyid Hassan Qazwini with 3 loud salawats ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Thank you. Thank you so much. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. My dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. There are 2 images drawn for Sayeda Zainab alayhi salam in the Shi'i psyche. One image that describes Sayeda Zainab as a depressed and a broken lady who was overwhelmed with the tragedy of Ashura and by the death of her brothers, sons, and nephews and cousins. A lady who was agonizing the whole time and basically lamenting the death and the martyrdom of her relatives in Karbala the whole time. But there is another image of Sayeda Zainab, which I think is more accurate. And that is the image of a Sayeda Zainab that is defiant, ferocious, and resilient. And never broken, never broken. And I would like to examine that image of a Sayeda Zainab tonight and focus on that image. First, who is Sayeda Zainab? Sayeda Zainab is the daughter of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam and Fatima al-Zahra. And if we believe in the law of heredity and genetics, there is no doubt that Zainab was a strong woman, someone who was fathered by Ali ibn Abi Talib, the most courageous man in the Arabian Peninsula, and Fatima al-Zahra, the daughter of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, who defied the rulers of her time. Would be there any doubt remaining that Zainab was a powerful and a courageous woman? Someone who was fathered by a man who says, Wallah, I swear by Allah, if all Arabs gather to fight me, I will not shy away from fighting them back. Wallahi لو اجتمعت العرب على قتالي لما وليت منها فرارا. She is the daughter of a woman who stood in the masjid of her father, Rasulullah, in Medina, defying the tyrant of the time with her eloquent speech. So Zaynab is undoubtedly was a powerful, courageous, and audacious woman. And history proves that. The post-Ashura event proves that Zaynab was a unique woman. And that's why Imam Hussein chose her from among other women to lead the revolution of Ashura after his martyrdom. Well, we all know Imam Hussein was martyred in the day of Ashura, and he knew that. Imam Hussein, he knew he will be killed in the day of Ashura. He had foreseen that. In fact, in the speech he gave the eve of Ashura, the night before Ashura, he told his companions, قال أصحابي إن هذا الليل قد غشيكم. It is dark outside. Take advantage of the dark and leave me alone. Because this army of Yazid came to fight me, not you. وَلَوْ ظَفَرُوا بِي لَذَهَلُوا عَنْ غَيْرِ. If they catch me, they will not go after you. So I offer you the opportunity to leave and leave me alone. I will be killed. But they chose to stay with him. Imam Hussein knew he will be killed in the day of Ashura. But he also knew that his revolution will not end there. The revolution he started will continue. And he was about choosing a leader who can continue leading the revolution after him. His son, Imam Zayn al-Abidin, was extremely sick. And that's why he could not participate in the war, in the battle. So the one who was well equipped, well fit to lead the revolution after Imam Hussein was Sayeda Zainab. And historians say that the night before Ashura, the eve of Ashura, Sheikh al-Mufid in his book, in one of his books, says Imam Hussein had a private meeting with Sayeda Zainab the eve of Ashura, in which he delivered all the instructions she needed to lead the revolution after his martyrdom. Basically, he was mentoring her. And Imam Hussein was very smart in choosing Sayeda Zainab, because basically she fits the description of the leader who was capable of leading the revolution after his martyrdom. She was smart, she was courageous, she was patient, and she was resilient, and she was visionary. That's what Imam Hussein was looking for, someone who fits the description of a leader who would lead the post-Ashura revolution. And Zainab was there. Imam Hussein alayhi salam basically had three objectives for Zainab to fulfill after his martyrdom. The first objective foreseen by Imam Hussein alayhi salam for Zainab to play and to fulfill was to supervise over the camp of Imam Hussein. When Imam Hussein was killed, he left behind 83 women and children, all widows and all orphans. Remember, all men were killed. All men were killed in the day of Ashura. with the exception of Imam Zain al-Abidin, because he was extremely sick. So the Imam alayhi salam handed Sayeda Zaynab the task of protecting his family, all women and children left behind after Imam Hussein's martyrdom, especially protecting the life of Imam Zain al-Abidin. Remember, Imam Zain al-Abidin was not an ordinary person. He was no ordinary individual. He is the Imam. Not only he is the Imam, the third Imam of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, he was also the continuation of the offspring of the Prophet. The lineage of the Prophet goes through Imam Zain al-Abidin. Had he been killed in the day of Ashura or after Ashura, that meant the offspring of the Prophet would be cut off. There is no lineage continuing for the Prophet. Imam Zain al-Abidin was the one who carried the lineage of the Prophet in the community by getting married afterward and having children and grandchildren. Imam Muhammad al-Baqir and Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, and on and on. So protecting the life of Imam Zain al-Abidin was a priority for Imam Hussein and for Sayeda Zainab. And she did manage well to protect him. Imam Zain al-Abidin was almost killed twice. Once in the day of Ashura, after the martyrdom of Imam Hussein, when the soldiers of Yazid broke into the tent of Imam Zain al-Abidin, searching for any remaining male member, and they found Imam Zain al-Abidin. Shimr, the murderer of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he ordered the soldiers to kill Imam Zain al-Abidin. Sayeda Zainab interfered. She herself over Imam Zain al-Abidin, telling Yazid, you will not kill Zain al-Abidin before killing me over my dead body. When the commander of Yazid's army saw that, Umar ibn Sa'ad, he told Shimr to back down. He says, leave him alone. That was the first time she literally saved the life of Imam Zain al-Abidin. The second time, when they all moved to Kufa and they entered the chamber of Ibn Ziad, the regional governor of Iraq, on behalf of Yazid. Ibn Ziad was a very vicious person, very vicious and brutal. When he saw Imam Zain al-Abidin for the first time, he basically scolded his soldiers, why did you leave this man? Why didn't you kill him? And he ordered them to go and kill him. He had clear instructions from Yazid not to leave any male member of the family of Imam Hussein alive. None. And you know why? You know why? Because to Yazid, any male member of the family of Hussein is a replica of who? Of Hussein. And Hussein is a replica of the Prophet. He will be a threat. Once he grows up, he will be a threat to Yazid and his rule. So Yazid gave clear instructions to Ibn Ziyad and Umar ibn Sa'ad, لا تدعوا لأهل هذا البيت باقي. Don't leave any male member living, surviving after the death of Hussein. So when he ordered to kill Imam Zain al-Abidin, Sayeda Zainab interfered. And I'm going to go back to that incident soon. That was her first and primary role after the martyrdom of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. To basically protect the family, the remaining widows and children, and particularly Imam Zain al-Abidin. And she succeeded, by far she succeeded in doing that. She would make sure that all widows are protected, are watched over, all orphans are cared for, and she would not leave Karbala or any other spot they stayed at before making sure that everybody is taken care of. That was the primary goal. The second objective Imam Hussein has foreseen for Sayyidah Zainab was to spread the story of Ashura and to raise public awareness. Remember, everybody was killed. All male members were killed in Karbala. Imam Hussein, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, Ali al-Akbar, and 70 other companions. Who would disseminate the message of Imam Hussein, the reality of Karbala to people? Who would tell the masses in the Muslim world on what happened in Karbala? Sayyidah Zainab. So she would take advantage of every opportunity she had to raise awareness, to basically let people know what happened exactly in Karbala. When they entered Kufa as war captives, all people in Kufa came to watch them. Many people came to watch them as motivated by their own curiosity. They just wanted to know what happened to these people and why they are taking captives. And some people came out of sympathy to Ahlul Bayt. Sayyidah Zainab took this opportunity, took advantage of this opportunity, and she relayed to them what happened in Karbala. يا أهل الكوفة أتبكون وتنتحبون ألا فلا رقأت الدمعة ولا هدأت الرنة أتدرون أي كبد لرسول الله فريتم وأي دم له سفكتم وأي حرمة له انتهكتم. You are crying now? Go ahead and cry as much as you can. She scolded them. She was trying to make them feel guilty so they would revolt against Yazid. Do you know what you did? Do you know whose blood was spilled in Karbala? It was the blood of the Prophet. Do you know whose women were exposed in Karbala? The women of the Prophet. Do you know whose body was dismembered in Karbala? It was the body of the Prophet. And she basically was relaying to them what happened in Karbala, and people were crying and crying. She turned that into a very dramatic scene in Kufa. So basically her job was to awaken people in Kufa, in Halab, in Hims, and in Damascus. Wherever they went, remember, they were being paraded by Yazid through the Muslim country. Wherever they stopped or wherever they passed through, Zainab would give a brief speech. And she makes people understand what happened in Karbala. Most people were unaware. The propaganda of Yazid was so powerful that many people either did not know what happened in Karbala, the scale of the crime, or they thought it is Hussein who rebelled against Yazid. Yazid is the legitimate leader, the good guy, and Hussein is the bad guy. So she flipped. It backfired. She would tell them, Hussein is the son of Rasulullah. No way he can be the bad guy. And Yazid is the son of Muawiyah and Abu Sufyan. She reminded them who Abu Sufyan was, the man who always fought against the Prophet. For almost 20 years, Abu Sufyan was heading the camp fighting the Prophet until he gave up. When the Prophet conquered Mecca, Abu Sufyan and his wife Hind, they gave up. They realized they cannot win the war with the Prophet. They gave up and they became an internal enemy, disguising in the name of Islam. Zainab was capable through her eloquence. She was a very eloquent woman. And through her speeches and communications, she was able to spread the message. She was able to spread the message of the revolution and make people know what happened, aware of what happened in Karbala. By the way, you all know that Sayeda Zainab, after the tragedy of Ashura, she was being paraded from Iraq to Syria, back to Iraq, and then back to Medina in Saudi Arabia today. Why she is buried in Syria? Have you asked yourself this question? Why is she buried in a suburb of Damascus? Because historians say when she went back to Medina, she never relented exposing the regime and spreading the message of Imam Hussein in Medina by having women sessions, giving women session, Islamic awareness sessions to women. She was able to spread resentment among Muslim masses against the regime. So much so that the governor of Medina wrote to Yazid, if you care about Medina and the masses, you need to find a solution for Zainab. He summoned her and her husband to Syria to be basically under house arrest till she died in the suburbs of Damascus called Rawiya. Rawiya is the same exact place where she is buried now. Now it is called the Sayeda Zainab. The village called Sayeda Zainab, but it used to be called Rawiya, a village not too far from Damascus, where her shrine is today. So Sayeda Zainab was very determined at disseminating the message of Imam Hussein, awakening people, and making sure that the message of Imam Hussein got across. Basically laying the foundation for upcoming revolutions that took place 3 years ago by a bunch of people called At-Tawabin, repentant, who revolted against Bani Umayyah, and that was the first revolution ever recorded after the martyrdom of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. The third objective for Sayeda Zainab was to challenge the tyrant Yazid and his associate. Let me focus on one point right now, my dear brothers and sisters. Yazid and most tyrants always, they focus on the short-term victory. But leaders like Imam Hussein and those who follow Imam Hussein, they focus on long-term victory. Let me give you a small example of our modern day today. Israel. Israel was founded based on what? On sympathy. Drawn from what? From what? Any answer? From Holocaust. If it was not for the Holocaust, Israel would not have been founded in year 1948. The Zionists were powerful and savvy in exploiting the international sympathy occurred after the Holocaust in creating momentum that led to creation of Israel in 1948. So basically, the small country called Israel, or the small regime, basically the foundation for that regime was to exploit the international sympathy. Today, when Israel cracks down on Palestinians, achieving a short-term victory, yes, Israel was capable of demolishing Gaza, killing over 60,000 people, wounding another 200,000 people, displacing 2 million people. But do you know on what cost that came? Israel is losing legitimacy even among its allies. France, Britain, Germany, a country after country in Europe that used to be staunch supporters of Israel, now questioning the legitimacy of Israel. Netanyahu and Israel were capitalizing on the short-term victory, eliminating the Palestinians or any resistance. But the Palestinians were capitalizing on the long-term victory, and that is to delegitimize Israel and to put a huge question mark on its legitimacy that was originally drawn from the sympathy from the Holocaust. Same thing Sayeda Zainab did. Sayeda Zainab, well, obviously Yazid was the victorious in a military sense, militarily, in Karbala. He achieved a short-term victory over Imam Hussein. But in the long term, Imam Hussein, followed by Sayyidah Zainab, they were capitalizing on the long-term victory. And that is to delegitimize Yazid, that led to collapse of his regime 70 years later. In fact, his own rule, his own reign, ended 3 years later. And the entire empire of Bani Umayyah collapsed 70 years later due to the tragedy of Sayyidah Zainab and Imam Hussein alayhi salam, by delegitimizing Yazid and his rule. So Sayyidah Zainab was so successful, and subhanallah, it's so amazing how you can imagine a woman overwhelmed and stricken with so many tragedies. She lost at least 2 sons in Karbala, in the Battle of Karbala. At least 5 brothers. Imam Hussein, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, and his 3 siblings. She lost at least 5, 6 nephews. Ali al-Akbar, Ali al-Asghar, al-Qasim, and many cousins. But she was so powerful, so resilient, never weakened, never weakened. Yes, her heart was full of pain, but that pain had never been translated in any sign of weakness in her personality. In fact, the other way around. The more tragedies she faced, the stronger she was, the more defiant she was. Remember the dialogue that took place between her and Ibn Ziad when she entered his chamber. Most of you have heard the story during Ashura, but I want to stop for a minute to analyze her words. When she was brought to the palace of Ibn Ziyad after the tragedy of Ashura, Ibn Ziyad, as you know, he is the governor of Iraq on behalf of Yazid. Yazid was the emperor, and Ibn Ziyad was the governor of Iraq on behalf of Yazid. When they came in, Zaynab disguised herself. She wrapped herself with her hijab so she would not be recognized. Ibn Ziyad spotted her, and he asked his associate, Man هذه المتنكرة? Who is this lady who's trying to disguise herself so hard? فقيل له أنها زينب ابنة علي ibn Abi Talib. He was told that lady is Zainab. He says, is that Zainab? They told him, yes, that's Zainab. What did he say? He looked at Zainab and he says, Ya Zainab, كيف رأيت صنع الله بأخيك والعصاة المردة من أهل بيته? Zainab, how do you find what happened to your rebellious brother and his rebellious household when they were killed in Karbala? How do you find that? How do you see that? What did she say? She gave a brilliant answer. Wallahi, the most brilliant answer. She says, ما رأيت إلا جميلة. I haven't seen anything but a beauty. I say to those who say, why this happened to us? Why many people were killed in Lebanon? Homes were destroyed. Leaders were killed. Why this happened to us? I remind you of what Sayyidah Zainab said to Ibn Ziyad. I remind you of her answer, ما رأيت إلا جميلة. For those who question why this happened to us in Lebanon and in Yemen, don't focus on the short term. Focus on the long term. Yes, in the short term, Israel was the triumphant. But on the long term, it's not. It's not. That's why Sayeda Zainab, I haven't seen anything but beauty. I can foresee the demise of you and your leader, Yazid. 3 years later, Ibn Ziad was killed in a very tragic way. Yazid died 3 years later in a tragic way. Zainab was seeing the future. Just like you see cars looming from Ford Road now, that's how Sayeda Zainab was foreseeing the future. She focused on the long-term victory. ما رأيت إلا جميلة. I haven't seen nothing but beauty. هؤلاء قوم برزوا إلى مضاجعهم. My brother and his family were predestined to be martyrs. They were called upon by Allah to be martyrs, and they did fulfill that call. برزوا إلى مضاجعهم وسيجمع الله بينك وبينهم يوم القيامة. Allah will bring you together with them in the day of judgment, where you will be judged and you will be condemned. What an eloquent answer. No one other than Sayeda Zainab could have said these words. No one other than a woman given birth by Fatima al-Zahra could have said these words. No one else other than a woman given birth and fathered by Ali ibn Abi Talib could have said these words. She was courageous and she was foreseeing the future. ما رأيت إلا جميلة. How defiant, how strong. And then Ibn Ziyad tried to kill Imam Zayn al-Abidin. She stopped him. She told him, over my body. If you want to kill him, kill me first. Also, when she went to Syria, she gave a beautiful khutbah at the chamber of the emperor. Yazid was the emperor. He was ruling over a vast country stretching from China all the way in the east to Morocco in the west. Huge country. No one could have defied Yazid. No one could have defied Yazid. He is a tyrant. He's intimidating. He's vulgar. And he is bullying. No one can stand up for Yazid. Only Zaynab. When they entered in his chamber, and his chamber was packed by people, he declared that he will open his door for masses, for people in Damascus to come and watch those rebellious captives. His goal was to cast a negative image on Imam Hussein and his family, depicting them as a bunch of kharijis, rebellious, rogue fighters, mafias. That's how he would depict Imam Hussein and his family. But it backfired. Sayeda Zainab took that opportunity to expose Yazid before people and to challenge him. Yazid was so jubilant when he was brought the head of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, the severed head of Imam Hussein. And he was so jubilant and so excited to see the head of Imam Hussein severed, being put in a tray before him. He would take a stick and he basically hit Imam Hussein's lips with it, expressing joy and jubilation. Sayeda Zainab decided to face him head on. She says, Ya Yazid, أظننت يا يزيد حيث أخذت علينا أقطار الأرض وآفاق السماء أن بك على الله كرامة وأن بنا عليه هوانا. Yazid, you think because you were the victorious in short term and we were taken as captives, you think God loves you and God honors you? Do you take this as a sign that Allah loves you and He hates us? It's the other way around. Allah is setting a big trap for you. Allah is digging your grave by giving you this power so He can take you in. He can suck you in. It's a trap set for Allah, set by Allah for you. And then she gave a beautiful speech in which she condemned his act of hitting Imam Hussein with his stick and cheering up his ancestors, his pagan ancestors. And then she said the following. Listen to those words. Wallahi, those words would move mountains. Now she's speaking to the emperor, to the most feared man on earth. The man who intimidated basically every single man on earth. She says, وَلَئِنْ جَرَّتْ عَلَيَّ الدَّوَاهِي مُخَاطَبَتَكَ إِنِّي لَأَسْتَصْغِرُ قَدْرَكَ. She says, Yazid, know that you are not worth me speaking to you. You're not worth me, Zaynab, speaking to you. You don't desire that honor. You don't desire that honor. That a woman like you speaking to a petty, worthless man like you. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. وَلَئِنْ جَرَّتْ عَلَيَّ الدَّوَاهِي مُخَاطَبَتَكَ إِنِّي لَأَسْتَصْغِرُ قَدْرَكَ وَأَسْتَكْثِرُ تَوْبِيخَكَ. It's too much for me to speak to you. But what can I do? It is the calamities, it is the tragedies that put me here. Otherwise, you don't deserve a word from me. You are much lower than a woman like me, the descendant of Prophet Muhammad, speaking to a petty guy like you. ولكن العيون عبرة والصدور حرة. What can I do when my heart is full of pain and my eyes are teary? It is the destiny that brought me here. Otherwise, I would never choose on my own to speak to a man like you. You're so despicable that you're not worth me speaking to you. Then she said the following. She says, يا يزيد فاسع سعيك وناصب جهدك وهل جمعك إلا عدد وأيامك إلا بدد وأيامك إلا عدد ورأيك إلا فند. She says, Yazid, do whatever you can and use whatever you have in your disposal. I swear by Allah, your days are numbered and your efforts will go in vain. And you are such a big loser. فوالله لا تمحو ذكرنا ولا تميت ذكرنا. You will never be able to extinguish the light of Ahlul Bayt. You will never able, because Yazid, you don't know that Allah is behind us. Allah is behind us. And you cannot fight with Allah. You can fight with people, but you cannot fight with Allah. You will lose. After she finished, a man, a misled man, a Syrian guy, stood up and he looked at a young daughter of Imam Hussein. Her name is Fatima. She was 8-year-old. She said to Yazid, Ya Yazid, give me this concubine as a gift. Referring to who? Fatima, the daughter of Imam Hussein. He wanted to take her as a slave, concubine. Fatima was so scared, panicking. She came to her auntie Zaynab, holding to her hijab and telling her, Amma, please, those guys want to take me as a slave, as a concubine. Again, Zaynab with a calm voice, but defiant one. She says, my beloved niece, don't worry. He can't do that. Nor his boss, Yazid. They can't do this. Yazid being provoked by Zaynab challenging him. She says, yes, I can. I easily can give your niece, Fatima, as a concubine to this guy. She said, not before you declare that you're not Muslim anymore. He says, I'm not Muslim. Your father is not Muslim. Your brother Hussein is not Muslim. She says, well, it is because of my father and my brother and my grandfather you became Muslim, you and family, if you are really Muslim. Slap after slap. Punch after punch. Yazid was so dizzy that he could not say anything. He was speechless. A lady who is disarmed from any weapon but the weapon of truth and eloquence was able to humiliate him, to make him so small before his constituencies, before his followers, to belittle him and to mock him without him being able to do anything. That was Sayeda Zainab. Good job, Imam Hussein. Good job for choosing Zainab to fight your fight on your behalf with Yazid. Ya Aba Abdullah, you were martyred in the day of Ashura, but your sister did a great job in slapping your enemy, Yazid. When you were not able to be there to slap him yourself, it was your sister Zainab who slapped him. One slap after another, smacking him in his face. I conclude with a small incident that took place in the palace of Yazid. Yazid, between two parentheses, prior to Karbala tragedy, he married a lady. Her name is Hind bint Abdullah bin Amir bin Kariz. Her father was an honorable tribal chief, and he was a pro-Imam Ali. And her brothers were pro-Imam Ali. But after the martyrdom of Imam Ali, and after the death of her father, her brothers joined Yazid and Muawiyah. And because of this new bonds that took place between her brothers and Yazid, Yazid proposed for her marriage and he married her. Her name is Hind. Hind lived part of her life in Kufa when in the years Imam Ali was in Kufa. Remember, Imam Ali lived in Kufa for about 5 years. During those years, prior to Karbala, almost 20 years, 25 years before Karbala's revolution, Imam Ali alayhi salam, when he was the Khalifa, he chose Kufa as his capital. Hind and her father and her brothers lived in Kufa during that time. Sayeda Zainab used to give lessons on Quran. One of her students was Hind. Now Hind is the wife of Yazid. She's a princess. When Yazid was speaking to Sayeda Zainab and Sayeda Zainab was speaking, there was a curtain set behind Yazid, to which and behind which Princess Hind was sitting and listening. She was listening, the dialogue, the conversation between Yazid, and her husband, and Sayeda Zainab. But she did not recognize Sayeda Zainab. When she heard the voice of Sayeda Zainab, she looked at her aides and she says, do I hear the voice of Sayeda Zainab? They told her, no, Sayeda Zainab. First she said, I hear the voice of Ali ibn Abi Talib. I hear a voice very similar to the voice of my master Ali ibn Abi Talib. They told her no, as Ali ibn Abi Talib died 24 years ago. She says, if it's not Ali, someone related to Ali ibn Abi Talib. I want to know who that person is who's speaking, whose voice is so similar to the voice of Ali ibn Abi Talib. She dispatched one of her female aides, servants, to go and check. The servant went, she pulled the curtain and she noticed that this is Yazid speaking to Sayeda Zainab. She asked about Sayeda Zainab. She doesn't know Sayeda Zainab. She asked some of the soldiers, who is this lady talking to Yazid? She was told it is Sayeda Zainab bint Ali ibn Abi Talib. The lady, the servant, came back and told Hind, the princess, the wife of Yazid, she said, I asked the soldier and he told me the speaker of Zaynab. And Hind said, Zaynab? Which Zaynab? There are many Zaynabs. He says, Zaynab bint Ali ibn Abi Talib. She says, what are you talking about? Zaynab? The daughter of Ali ibn Abi Talib is here? In Yazid's chamber? She says, yeah, that's what the soldier told me. She came too close to the curtain to verify the voice. She realized this is Sayyidah Zainab. She pulled the curtain. And she came before people and before Yazid. She is telling Yazid, shame on you, Yazid. You cover your wife and your ladies behind the curtain and you expose the daughter of Fatima al-Zahra and Ali ibn Abi Talib. You expose the daughter of Rasulullah. Shame on you. Shame on you, Yazid, for trying to humiliate the family of the Prophet. Now, until now, Zaynab was speaking with full force with Yazid and defiantly speaking to Yazid. But when she saw Hind coming out and being so protected and well shielded behind the curtain, and she is being exposed at the majlis of Yazid without having her protectors, Imam Hussein and Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, that scene broke her heart and brought her tears down. She remembered now that Yazid is protecting his wife and his sisters, and she has no protector. Her brothers were killed. Hussein was killed. Abbas was killed. She broke in tears, and Hind rushed to her. She says, my lady Zainab, I apologize to you for what my husband Yazid did to you. I really apologize. I can't see you being exposed in his majlis when he is trying to protect his wife and shield his women. That was the time Zaynab alayhi salam wished that she would be surrounded by her brothers, Imam Hussein and Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas alayhi salam. Probably that's the only weak moment after the revolution of Ashura in which she felt so vulnerable and protected and defenseless. She says, Yazid, you have power and you have soldiers, you have army to protect yourself, and you think we have no protectors, but Allah is our protector. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات تابع اللهم بيننا وبينهم بالخيرات إنك مجيب الدعوات إنك قاضي الحاجات إنك على كل شيء قدير وإلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات ولقضاء حوائجنا وشفاء مرضانا. I ask you that we recite Surah Al-Mubarakat Al-Fatiha for the healing of the sick and for the answering of prayers. I ask you all to recite Surah Al-Mubarakat Al-Fatiha. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi